It was one of those slow, hazy afternoons where time seems to stretch forever, and you don't know if you're bored or just existing. I was working from home, nursing a pulled muscle in my back, and taking breaks between calls and emails. The pain was annoying, but nothing serious enough to make me take the whole day off. So, I did what any guy would do when he's stuck at home with too much time on his hands. I scrolled through social media. I wasn't expecting anything groundbreaking, just the usual stuff: funny cat videos, people showing off their lunches, and a bunch of life hacks I'd never try. But then something caught my eye: a viral post about relationships and infidelity. The comments were a mix of heartbreaking confessions and snarky jokes, but one stood out. It was a story from a guy talking about confronting his wife when he suspected she was cheating. He said the key was asking her one simple question: "How long has this been going on?" The guy claimed that when you ask that question, it often forced people to confess. No spinning lies or deflecting, just a direct answer. His reasoning was that the guilt was too heavy to ignore once you asked. I didn't have any reason to suspect Emma, my wife. We'd been together 5 years, and sure, things had settled into a comfortable routine, but I trusted her. So why was I so curious about the guy's theory? I'd never thought about confronting Emma with something like that, at least not seriously, but something about it intrigued me. Felt like an experiment. Could that simple question really pull the truth out of someone? What would Emma say if I asked her? I convinced myself it was just curiosity. I wasn't worried. I wasn't suspicious. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was like a tiny seed had been planted, and now I had to know the answer. The thought stuck with me for the rest of the day, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Emma got home around 5, the usual time. She came through the door, shrugging off her coat, tossing her bag onto the couch. Same as always. "How was your day?" she asked, setting her keys in the dish by the door, the routine rhythm of her movements oddly soothing. "Fine," I said, not really paying attention. I was in the middle of checking emails, but I could hear her in the kitchen, rustling around, putting the kettle on for tea. The way she did everything without thinking, like we were in sync. Comfort, if you asked me. We didn't say much, and it wasn't like we needed to. The silence was just normal. I liked the way it felt sometimes. You don't have to fill every moment with noise, especially after 5 years. Still, part of me wondered if it was just that, comfort, and if comfort was enough anymore. We ate dinner together, the same dinner we had most nights. Something simple. Tonight, it was pasta with chicken, salad on the side. We had a little talk about work, and she mentioned a student who had gotten in trouble for skipping class. I told her about a tough day on site at the construction job, how the crew had been a few hours behind schedule. Nothing out of the ordinary. "I'm thinking about going for a run this weekend," Emma said, chewing thoughtfully, looking up from her plate. To get some fresh air. "Maybe you could join me?" I nodded. "Yeah, maybe." It wasn't that I didn't want to, but I'd been feeling off for the past couple of days, like my mind had started wandering into places it shouldn't go. So, I kept thinking about that stupid question. "How long has this been going on?" "Everything okay?" she asked, brow furrowed just slightly. She'd caught me zoning out, staring at my plate, probably thinking I was being weird. I shook my head, trying to shrug it off. "Yeah, just tired. Back's been bothering me a little." She smiled and reached across the table, squeezing my hand for a second. "You need to take it easy." I squeezed back, though it felt a little forced, like I was trying to hold on to something that wasn't quite there anymore. Later, after dinner, we fell into our usual routine again. Me on the couch with my phone, flipping through random stuff, and Emma reading her book in the armchair by the window. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt warm and familiar. But still, that little question lingered in my head, like I was carrying it around without realizing. How would Emma react if I just asked her? Really asked her. I knew there was nothing wrong. I didn't suspect anything, but the thought wouldn't go away. It was like a dare I couldn't resist, and I couldn't shake the urge to try it. Maybe it was just curiosity, like I'd convinced myself. It didn't mean anything. I'd just ask and then I'd know. I almost convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if maybe this could be my way of testing something. Not about Emma, no, not about her. It was about people, about how easy it is to believe you know someone. And maybe, just maybe, asking her that question would show me something I hadn't seen before. The next day, we did our usual thing. Emma went to work, and I stayed home, mostly resting. But my thoughts were still tangled in that stupid question. I couldn't seem to get it out of my head. It was like my brain was trying to create a version of reality where I didn't just know my wife. I really knew her. And that wasn't a good thing, was it? When Emma came home that night, everything felt the same. Normal. The easy hum of our life, the gentle rhythm of things. But I was different now. I couldn't look at her without that little voice asking, what if? At dinner, we talked about our weekend plans, but my mind kept drifting to the question. The one I hadn't asked yet. I didn't say anything, though. Not that night. The next morning, I woke up with the same stiff back, a reminder that I was still on my forced vacation. The pain was there, but manageable. I decided to take another day off, figuring I might as well rest a little longer. I set up shop in the spare bedroom again, where the lighting was good, and I could still focus on work without being in the middle of everything. But today it was harder to focus. The emails piled up, and the phone calls came through, but my mind kept drifting back to that stupid question. The one from the post. How long has this been going on? I knew it was dumb. I knew Emma hadn't given me any reason to doubt her. Not once. She was my wife and things were fine, routine, sure, but fine. I'd never seen anything that made me question her loyalty. And yet, I kept imagining what it would be like to ask her. I mean, why not? It wasn't like I was accusing her of anything. It was just a question, a way to test something, to see if the technique worked. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't trying to catch her in anything. I was just curious, right? I opened the document I was working on and tried to focus, but it was impossible to ignore the thought. I rehearsed the words in my head, the way it would sound. How long has this been going on? I imagined her face when I said it, trying to gauge what her reaction might be. Would she be shocked? Confused? Would she laugh it off? Or, God, would she freeze up? I had no idea. But the thought of seeing her reaction, knowing something I didn't before, it was almost intoxicating. It felt like a psychological experiment. I could almost picture it. Me, asking the question, watching her face, dissecting every tiny detail. It wasn't about proving anything, at least not consciously. I didn't want to find out she was cheating, but I was fascinated by the idea of catching someone off guard. The vulnerability that would come with that. It almost felt like power, and I hated myself a little bit for thinking that way. I stared at my phone, scrolling through random crap just to avoid looking at the screen where my unfinished work was waiting for me. But it didn't matter. My mind was already elsewhere. I ran through the scenario again in my head. Felt harmless, maybe even funny, like a prank. A silly experiment between us. Nothing more. But still, the idea of catching her, of pulling back a layer and seeing something I hadn't seen before, that idea held a strange, growing pull. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I was actually eager to try it. I wasn't a guy who looked for trouble. Hell, I didn't even want trouble. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, what if? What if she wasn't the person I thought she was? What if something else was going on? I knew it was ridiculous. Emma and I had our issues, sure. There were days when we both felt stuck, like we were just going through the motions. But that was just marriage. People got complacent. It didn't mean there was anything wrong. At least I didn't think so. But now that the seed had been planted, I couldn't stop the thoughts from spiraling. What if, just once, I could catch someone being honest about something real, no matter how ugly it might be? I shook my head, trying to push it out. But every time I thought about the question, I found myself a little more eager to test it out, to see if it worked. If it didn't, fine. It would just be another weird thing to laugh about in the future. If it did, well, then I'd have to deal with the consequences of that. But there was something about the idea of testing the limits of trust, about seeing how far that simple question could really go. The house was quiet after dinner, the usual stillness settling in like a blanket. Emma had headed to the bathroom to take her shower, her footsteps light on the wooden floor as she disappeared down the hallway. I kept my eyes glued to my phone, but my thoughts kept circling back to what I was about to do. I told myself I was just curious, that this would be a harmless test. But as the minutes ticked by, the idea of asking her that question started to feel more like a dare. I waited until I heard the water turn off, and then I stood up slowly, my legs feeling heavy. My heart was beating a little faster than it should, and I couldn't tell if it was nerves or just anticipation. I slipped into the bedroom, walking quietly, trying not to make a sound. The door to the bathroom creaked open a few moments later, and Emma stepped out, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet, still clinging to the damp skin of her shoulders. She looked up, meeting my gaze, and for just a second, she smiled that soft, half-smile she always did after a long day. But it wasn't the same. It didn't feel right. I opened my mouth before I could stop myself, and the words came out sharp, almost like a challenge. How long has this been going on? The change in her was instant. One moment, she was relaxed, calm even, and the next, she froze. Her eyes widened, her whole body stiffening like she'd been caught in a trap. I don't know what I was expecting, but it sure as hell wasn't this. Her face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, or maybe like she was the one about to become one. For a moment, we both just stood there, in that heavy silence. Couldn't breathe. I felt like I was watching something I wasn't supposed to see. Her expression wasn't confusion. It wasn't the kind of surprise you get when someone asks you something random. No, this was different. This was guilt. Pure, undeniable guilt. Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the towel, and then she tried again, her voice trembling just enough to make my stomach drop. Sam, I don't. Her words caught, faltering like she was looking for something. An explanation, maybe, or a way to spin it. But she didn't find it. I could see it in her eyes. I didn't even know how to react. Part of me wanted to scream, wanted to tear into her. But I was frozen too, just standing there, my mind trying to catch up with the reality that was unfolding in front of me. This was the moment. This was exactly how those stories went. I tried to hold it together, but everything felt off, like the air in the room had thickened. It was all wrong. The way she was looking at me, the way she was not looking at me, was telling me more than any words could. She was guilty, and it didn't matter what she said after that. I could see it in the way her hands shook, in the way she refused to meet my eyes for more than a second at a time. She was hiding something. Sam, she started again, but she couldn't finish. Her breath hitched, and she dropped her gaze to the floor. It was like she couldn't get the words out, like whatever she was holding inside was choking her. And I realized I was still standing there, just waiting. Waiting for her to admit it, to make it real. I didn't know what to say. All I could think about was the look on her face. I wasn't angry yet, but I was getting there, and fast. The question hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I had wanted an answer. I had wanted to know. But now that I did, it felt worse than anything I'd imagined. Her eyes flicked up to mine for a split second, and I saw the panic in them. It was like she was trying to decide whether to lie to keep up the facade, or to just let it spill out. But no matter how hard she tried, the truth was already there. In the way her voice faltered and her face twisted with shame. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt, that whatever had been going on, it wasn't going to end well. Emma's hands were shaking now, her fingers trembling as she clutched the towel tighter around her body. She looked at me like she was trying to find the right words, but the longer she stood there, the less convincing it all seemed. Finally, she opened her mouth, the words coming out in a rush. Sam, I don't know how to explain this, but there's something I need to tell you, she stammered, her voice cracking. It's not what you think, but I've been seeing someone else. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I didn't even know how to react. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Felt like the world had shifted underneath me, like the ground had disappeared. What? I choked out, barely hearing my own voice. Who? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze, and that was all I needed to know. She didn't need to say it for me to already feel the weight of the truth crushing down on me. It's Tom, she whispered. Tom. My mind went blank. Not Tom. Not him. Tom was my friend, coworker, a guy I'd trusted, laughed with, worked side by side with on construction sites. I couldn't even process what she was saying. My mind couldn't wrap around it. Tom? It didn't make sense. This wasn't just some stranger, some faceless guy from the internet or the office. This was Tom. Someone I'd invited into our home. Someone I'd shared beers with after work. I felt the rage bubbling up inside me, but it wasn't just anger. It was disbelief, too. My hands were clammy, and my throat tightened. I could feel my blood rushing in my ears, but it was all too much. I needed air, I needed to think, but my brain wouldn't catch up. It was just crashing wave after wave of shock. Why? The word came out before I could stop it. Why him? Of all people. Emma's face crumpled, and she collapsed onto the edge of the bed, still clutching her towel like it was the only thing holding her together. I don't know. It's complicated. I felt so alone, Sam. I felt like we were just going through the motions, you know? Like everything had become routine. And Tom, he was there. He made me feel seen, made me feel wanted. It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake. But I thought it was the only way to feel like I mattered. The words hit me, but they didn't land. They didn't make it past the fog in my head. She felt alone? I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't blind. We had our moments. Hell, we'd even talked about how things had felt kind of quiet between us lately. But I never thought it was this bad. She never told me. She never said a word. How long? I asked, my voice rough. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I had to ask. How long has this been going on? A few months? She whispered, her face falling into her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Sam. It was just once, then a couple more times. It never should have happened. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She kept apologizing, over and over, but it all felt empty. She was sorry now, but where was the apology when I was right there? Living with her every day, trusting her, thinking everything was fine? I stood there, rooted to the spot, my chest tight. Her words were flooding over me, but I couldn't catch them. Tom, in our house, in my life. You slept with him, I said, the words tasting like acid in my mouth. It didn't feel real, but I had to say it. I needed it out there, even if I didn't want to hear it. Emma flinched, like I'd slapped her, but she didn't deny it. She nodded, her face contorting with shame. Yes, I never meant for it to happen, but it did. And I regret it. I regret it so much. It's over now, Sam. It ended before it could. Before it could get worse. It didn't matter. I wanted to ask her how long this had been brewing, why she never told me, why she couldn't just talk to me instead of throwing away everything we'd built. But I couldn't. My mind was too full of images. Tom's face, smiling in my living room, laughing over drinks, pretending everything was fine while he was betraying me in the worst way possible. And Emma. Emma was sitting there, tear-streaked and broken, but it didn't change what she'd done. She was guilty. I could see it now in every word, in every movement. The guilt was written all over her, and I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I didn't care if it was over. How was I supposed to move past this? How was I supposed to look at her the same way again? I wanted to hold on to what we had, but everything I knew about us, about me, was shattered in one sentence. I don't know if I can forgive you, I muttered, more to myself than to her. My heart was sinking, but I couldn't stop myself. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. And I didn't. Not right then. Not after everything that had just come crashing down. The next few days were a blur. I don't remember much of what happened, honestly. I barely slept, barely ate. Everything felt like it was happening to someone else. Like I was just watching myself go through the motions. The confrontation with Emma kept replaying in my head, over and over, like a broken record. Her face, pale and wide-eyed, when I asked her that question. Her trembling hands. Her broken apology. At work, I couldn't focus on anything. My brain kept drifting back to her and Tom, to everything I thought I knew about our life together being nothing but a lie. I tried to look at blueprints, check emails, but it was like I was moving through thick fog. I couldn't concentrate. I'd stare at a single sentence for minutes, then completely forget what I was doing. My coworkers noticed, of course. "Hey man, you okay?" Rick asked me one afternoon, looking at me like I was a ghost. I tried to brush it off. "Yeah, just tired. Back's still bothering me." Rick raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He probably knew something was off, but I wasn't ready to talk. Not about that. The truth was, I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't even know what to feel anymore. Was I angry? Betrayed? Or was I just empty? Every time I thought about what Emma had done, it felt like I was being hollowed out, little by little. I kept asking myself the same questions, trying to make sense of it all. Was there ever any real love between us? Had I been blind to something that had been brewing beneath the surface all this time? And then I'd get home, and it would hit me again. Emma. The house felt different now. Everything was wrong. I tried to act normal, like we could just go back to the way things were. But it was impossible. Every time I looked at her, I saw Tom. I saw the betrayal. I saw the woman who had stood in front of me and lied, over and over, about something that should have never happened. Emma would try to talk, try to apologize again, but I couldn't listen. I couldn't hear the words anymore. They were empty. She'd make small talk, ask how my day was, but I didn't know how to answer. How could I? "Did you hear from Rick today?" she asked one night, her voice tentative, like she was walking on eggshells. "He said he might need you to help with that new site project next week." I just nodded, grunting in response, but I wasn't really listening. I wasn't sure I even cared. The silence between us was suffocating. It wasn't just the tension, it was the distance. It was like I was living with a stranger. Every conversation felt forced, every gesture of affection a lie. I kept thinking, is this really what I've been living for the last 5 years? I started second-guessing everything. Our first date, our wedding, all the little moments that I thought defined us. Were they real? Or had I been fooling myself this whole time? I couldn't remember what it felt like to be in love with Emma. I couldn't even remember the last time we were really happy together. Had we ever been? Or had it always been just routine like everything else? I tried to block it out, but it was impossible. Every time I was near her, I felt the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. I kept wondering if I could ever move past this, if I could ever look at her the same way again. I couldn't imagine it. The idea of trusting her, of letting her back into my life completely, felt like a joke. Some nights, I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and think, what if I just walked away? What if I never came back? The thought was terrifying, but it also felt strangely freeing. The house was full of memories, sure, but it was also full of lies, and I didn't know how to live with that. But then Emma would touch my arm or try to smile at me, and for a split second, I would feel that pull again, the pull that made me marry her in the first place. She was sorry, she kept saying. She wanted to fix things, but I couldn't tell if it was enough. Could I forgive her? Could I forgive myself for letting it get this far? Would we ever get back to the way things were before all of this? I had no answers, just more questions. A few days after the conversation with Emma, she brought up something that I hadn't even considered. She suggested we try marriage counseling. "I think we need help," she said one evening, her voice quieter than usual, like she was afraid I might shut her down. "I know I messed up, Sam, but I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes." I stared at her, the words barely sinking in. Counseling? I'd never imagined it would come to that. I was so angry, so hurt, that the idea of sitting in a room with a stranger talking about us seemed impossible. But when I looked at her, really looked at her, I saw the desperation in her eyes, the same eyes that had betrayed me just days before. "I don't know if it'll help," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. I wasn't ready to forgive her, and I wasn't sure I could get there. But I couldn't ignore the way she was looking at me, the way she was hoping I'd say yes. "But maybe it's worth a shot." She nodded, relieved, but I wasn't. The thought of therapy felt like throwing a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. I didn't know if we could fix this. Hell, I didn't know if I wanted to. The first session was awkward as hell. We sat on opposite sides of the room, the therapist, Dr. Klein, staring at us, her notepad in her lap like she was waiting for us to spill our guts. I couldn't bring myself to look at Emma for more than a few seconds. Every time I did, all I could think about was Tom and the betrayal that had shattered everything. Dr. Klein's voice was calm, almost soothing. So, let's start by talking about why you're both here. Emma looked at me, her eyes pleading, and I could see she was nervous too. I think we're here because of me, she said quietly, her voice cracking slightly. I made a huge mistake. I hurt Sam, and I don't want to lose him, but I know I can't fix this on my own. I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to shut her down right there, to tell her that words didn't mean anything anymore, but I kept quiet, letting her talk. She kept going, her eyes glancing at me, then away. I didn't feel seen. I felt so alone in our marriage, like we were just existing together but not really living together. I thought things would get better, that they would change, but they didn't. And when I met Tom, he made me feel like I mattered, like I was important again. It was stupid and it was wrong, but I thought it would fix everything. It was hard to hear, hearing it all laid out like that, but it was even harder to sit there, pretending like I was okay. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. You thought cheating would fix things? That's your excuse. The words came out before I could stop them, sharp and bitter. I could feel the anger building in me, like fire in my chest. I wasn't sure if I was angry at her or at myself for letting it go on so long without realizing how bad it had gotten. Emma flinched like I'd slapped her. Sam, I know it doesn't make sense. It was a stupid decision, and I regret it more than anything. But I didn't know what else to do. I was so scared of losing you. She took a shaky breath, glancing at Dr. Klein. I thought maybe if I could feel something again, if I could feel alive, it would help me fix everything that was wrong. I was desperate. Dr. Klein nodded gently, trying to guide the conversation back. Sam, how does that make you feel? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her everything that had been running through my head. How I felt like I was living with a stranger. How the foundation of everything I thought I knew was crumbling under my feet. But all I could manage was a half-grunt, a deep breath, and a quiet, I don't know. The therapy sessions after that were a mixture of awkward silence and forced honesty. Emma would open up and I'd try to listen, but it never felt like enough. I kept hearing her explain how lonely she had been, how she thought she was going to lose me, how desperate she was to feel valued again. But it didn't change anything. I couldn't unhear what had happened. The betrayal, the lies, everything that had been swept under the rug for years. It was still there, hanging between us. Every time Emma talked about her feelings of loneliness, I felt something inside me twist. I didn't know how to fix that, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. The more she opened up, the more I realized that maybe we'd both been blind to something bigger than just her affair. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I didn't think it was this bad. It made me question everything. Did we have real problems we'd never talked about? Were we even the people we thought we were when we said our vows? I was torn. Part of me still wanted to fix it, still wanted to believe we could get back to what we once had. But the other part of me, the part that felt burned and betrayed, knew that trusting Emma again felt impossible. I wasn't sure if I could ever get past it. But maybe I was fooling myself into thinking it was too late. Maybe I was just scared. I didn't know the answer. I wasn't sure I ever would. A few weeks into therapy, I started to feel the weight of everything pressing down on me more than ever. Each session, Emma would try to open up, trying to make herself vulnerable, to show me that she was changing, that she was sorry. But every time she did, all I could think about was what she had done. I couldn't look at her without remembering the betrayal. She'd reach out, touch my arm, try to hold my hand during those sessions, but I couldn't feel the connection anymore. It wasn't even about her. It was about me. I had lost the ability to trust her, and that was something you didn't get back just because you said sorry enough times. The distance between us had grown, not just physically, but emotionally. Every time she tried to reconnect, I found myself pulling away. I think about everything I'd heard in therapy, about how she felt neglected, how she'd been lonely. And it made me angry. Not because she'd had an affair, but because I realized too late that we had never talked about those feelings. She'd kept them buried, and instead of dealing with them, she had gone and done the one thing that destroyed everything. I couldn't escape the thoughts. Every little thing she did, I started questioning. A late night at work? I wondered if she was seeing Tom again. A phone call that lasted too long? I thought she was hiding something. I didn't even need a reason to doubt her anymore. I just did. The trust was gone, and no amount of talking about it was going to fix that. One session, it all came to a head. We were sitting across from each other, Dr. Klein in the middle, trying to guide the conversation. Emma looked at me, trying to catch my eye, but I was staring at the floor, my hands clenched in my lap. "Sam," Dr. Klein said gently, "why don't you tell Emma what you're feeling right now? What's going through your mind?" I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come at first. I wanted to say something calm, something that wouldn't sound like a confession of defeat, but it was too much and I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I don't think I can do this," I said, my voice rough. "I don't think I can forgive you. Not after everything. I can't trust you anymore, Emma. And without that, what's the point?" Her face twisted, her eyes welling up with tears. She started to say something, but I wasn't finished. "You broke everything. And I'm sitting here, listening to you talk about how lonely you were, how you felt neglected, but you never told me. You just went and did the worst thing you could have done. You didn't give me a chance to fix it with you. You just broke me." Emma reached for my hand, but I pulled it back before she could touch me. "I know I made a mistake," she said, her voice cracking. "I've apologized a million times. I know it's not enough, but I want to make this right. I want us to get through this. Sam, please just don't give up on us." I shook my head, trying to keep the frustration from spilling over. "I don't know how to move forward. I keep trying, but every time I look at you, I see him. I see Tom. I see someone who lied to me, and I don't know how to get past that." I could feel my chest tightening as I said the words, like I was choking on them, but they were true. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to give up on her, on us. But how could I move forward when all I could feel was the sting of her betrayal? Every time I thought about what had happened, about how my trust had been shattered, I couldn't breathe. "I can't trust you anymore, Emma," I said, my voice low but firm. "And without trust, there's nothing left. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm telling you that I can't. And I need to walk away." Her face crumpled, like the last little bit of hope she had was slipping through her fingers. "Sam, please, don't leave me. I'll do anything." I couldn't look at her anymore. The tears in her eyes, the desperate plea. It was like watching a version of her that didn't belong to me anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I just felt empty. The decision had been building inside me for days, maybe weeks. And as much as it hurt to say it, to make it real, I knew it was the only way. "I'm done trying to fix something that feels like it's already broken," I said, the words heavy. "I'm leaving." Emma's face twisted in anguish, but I couldn't be the person who stayed and pretended like everything was okay. I couldn't keep going through the motions. This wasn't love anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight lift. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was relief. But I knew, deep down, I wasn't the same person who walked into this marriage. And I couldn't stay pretending I could be. I stood up, my heart pounding, and walked out of the room, the sound of Emma's sobs echoing behind me. The divorce went through quietly. There was no shouting, no drama, just the slow, inevitable process of separating everything we had once shared. We split the assets, divvied up the things that mattered. The house was sold, and Emma moved into a small apartment. I kept the truck, a few pieces of furniture, and some of the old things I didn't know what to do with. The financial stuff was easy, really. It was the emotional part that felt like it would take a lifetime to work through. After everything was signed, the weight didn't lift immediately. I thought it would. I thought the moment the divorce was final, I'd feel some kind of relief, like a door had closed for good. But it was more like the door had just been left open, and I was standing at the threshold, unsure of where to go next. I spent the next few months adjusting. My days were quieter. No more pretending to be happy. No more small talk with Emma. It was just me. And there was some peace in that. Some relief. But there was also loneliness. A quiet ache that settled in the pit of my stomach every evening when the house was still. I would come home after work, throw my keys on the counter, and just stand there for a minute, not sure what to do next. I'd sit down on the couch, flick on the TV, and let the noise fill the space. I didn't want to think about Emma. I didn't want to think about what happened. But it was hard to ignore. The divorce had ripped through my life like a storm, and everything that had come before. Our time together, the life we'd built, felt like it had been blown away, piece by piece. I thought a lot about trust during those months, about how easy it was to let someone in, to believe in something that was solid, only to watch it crumble when you least expected it. I thought about how fragile vulnerability was, how I had trusted Emma with everything, and how, in the end, that trust had been enough to break me. But I also thought about how I couldn't let that stop me from moving forward, how I couldn't let that be the thing that defined me. I didn't rush into anything new. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't need another relationship to fill the space Emma had left. But I knew what I wanted now. I wanted someone who could be honest, someone who could talk about the hard stuff, even when it wasn't easy. I wanted a partner who wouldn't keep things buried until it was too late. Looking back, I knew that the question I had asked Emma, "How long has this been going on?" had changed my life in ways I never expected. I had wanted to test something to see if the truth would come out. But I hadn't expected it to break me. I hadn't expected it to send my entire world spinning. But it did. And maybe that was a good thing. Because the truth, as painful as it was better than living a lie. I didn't regret asking it. Even though it had torn everything apart, it had also set me free. The truth, no matter how brutal, had given me the clarity I needed to move on. And as much as I missed the life I'd thought I had, I knew I was better off for knowing the truth. I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't the man who blindly trusted, who believed that everything would work out. But I was still me, and I was going to be okay.